Welcome to our 7th grade art lesson today, where we're going to explore the concept of change. And it's been said that the only constant in life is change itself. And we're going to be exploring this idea. Throughout our lives, we're going to see evidence of cultural change, environmental change, social change. So we're going to be exploring this concept through the creation of a mandala. But what is a mandala? Mandala is a Sanskrit word that loosely translates to mean circle or center. We often associate the word mandala with the circular designs that have repeating colors, shapes, and patterns radiating from the center. Mandalas can be precise, carefully measured, geometric, and perfectly symmetrical, or in contrast, free-flowing, organic, and asymmetrical. Mandalas are often drawn in circles, but they can also be drawn in squares as well. In the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, mandalas are an object of meditation to aid in one's spiritual development. The imagery depicts the universe, and the symbols represent one's spiritual journey. The cycles of birth, life, and death, the interconnectedness of all living things. The Hindu tradition focuses on the realization of the self as one with the divine, whereas in the Buddhist tradition, the emphasis is on the potential for enlightenment. Mandalas are symmetrical compositions that use radial symmetry and sometimes reflectional symmetry. We can find examples of radial symmetry throughout nature, art, and architecture. In exploring the sand paintings or mandalas of Buddhist monks from Tibet, we learn of the practice of sweeping up the sand and in the process destroying the mandala upon completion. This act is said to represent the concept of detaching from the permanent and embracing change. Keeping within this framework, we will be using at least 3 images or elements that represent the notion of change within our mandalas. We're going to be creating mandalas that use both radial and reflectional symmetry, where we use at least 3 to 4 images or elements that express the idea of change. And we're going to be using colored pencils, markers, and ink pens, and focus on the ideas of blending and creating contrast. You'll need drawing paper, tracing paper, a pencil, eraser, compass, protractor, ruler, colored pencils, markers, and ink pens. I'll cut my paper into a square so that I can center my circle within it. I'm first going to use a ruler to find the center of my square and place a small light X. Next, I'm going to use the pointed end of my compass and place it into the X and adjust my pencil to ensure it fits within the edges of my paper. To draw a circle, I find it beneficial to tilt the compass a bit and spin your paper instead of the compass itself. When you're finished with the compass, fold it back and be careful to not leave the pointed end sticking out, and do not use the compass for any other purpose other than drawing your circle. Next, I will use my protractor and line up the center of the circle with the center of the compass. We'll be using reflectional symmetry as well as radial symmetry for our project, so you will need an even number of sections in our circle to make this work. To create a more intricate design, we will divide the circle into at least 8 sections, but you can do more as long as there is an even number. To create my mandala, I will create 8 slices, which means I need to mark off every 45 degrees along the rounded outer edge of my compass. This will complete 180 degrees, or half of our circle. Then we'll spin the protractor, line up our existing marks with 0 and 180 degrees, then mark off the remaining angles at every 45 degrees. All the steps we complete with our pencil from our circle, guidelines, and imagery will either be erased or drawn back over. So make a habit of drawing lightly so that you can erase unwanted pencil marks later. We're now going to be intersecting our circle with straight lines, and for that we're going to need our ruler. We're going to place one edge of our ruler next to our marks that we made at every 45 degrees. Align the ruler so that it intersects your circle completely, going from one side to the other and all the way out to the edge. You will know that you have aligned your ruler correctly when you see that it passes directly through the center mark. Once again, drawing lightly, using your pencil against the edge of the ruler, draw a straight line from one side of the circle to the other. Repeat this step for each section until complete. So we're ready to begin drawing. As we begin drawing, we're going to be working within just one single slice of our mandala. And I want you to think about images and objects and elements that represent the idea of change to you. What are things that you've seen change in your life? What does change look like to you? For mine, I'm going to use some arrows representing the concept of changing directions or hands of a clock. I'm going to use some spiraling arms symbolizing the changing, ever-expanding universe. And I'm going to also use some form of water, as water comes in different changing forms and can change from, gas to liquid to solid. Once I've completed drawing all of my imagery within one single slice, I'm going to place a piece of tracing paper over top of it. Using a pencil, I will trace the edges of my slice, then all of the elements inside of it. Be sure to keep your tracing paper still. This is one step of your process with the pencil where you may find it beneficial to draw a little bit heavier for darker lines, as we're about to transfer this outline to a whole new section. To create our reflectional symmetry, flip your tracing paper and align it to fit within the adjacent slice and draw over your imagery again. As you trace over your line work, you are forcing the graphite on the opposite side of the tracing paper onto your drawing paper underneath, therefore transferring your images. You will continue to flip and trace to each next adjacent portion until the circle is filled. In our next step, we are going to use an ink pen and once again trace over our imagery. We will not be tracing over our original ruler lines in this step. To avoid smearing your ink, spin the paper for each section in the opposite direction of your drawing hand. Once our new black outline is complete, allow it to dry for at least 5 minutes before we take our erasers to it and now get rid of any existing pencil marks. Now it's time to bring our mandalas to life with some color. We're going to be focusing on blending colors and creating contrast. Before we do, let's take a moment to examine the work of colored pencil artist Sid Garrison and how he creates contrast through his use of color. We can see how in this work he chose to outline his patches of color, which helps separate them from the background. In this work, we can see how he places colors of different value alongside one another that helps to create contrast as well. The key to blending with colored pencils is all about adjusting pressure and layering one on top of the other. I will use this part to demonstrate how colors become denser and more saturated, applying heavier pressure when using them. As I move along, I'm going to lighten the amount of pressure and let the color fade. I'm now going to switch colors and move back towards the last section, layering my new color over top of the other with light pressure and transitioning to heavier as I want more saturation and let the colors blend on top of one another. As we move into blending color with markers, we will need to take a different approach, being that we don't have the ability to adjust the saturation of color depending on the pressure applied. The trick here is to blend colors on the surface of the paper using the marker itself. It may require several passes in pulling one color into another. You may find it helpful to avoid transitioning from one color extreme to another and instead use markers to blend colors similar in value. Before you begin this final step with color, do some experimenting with blending in both colored pencils and markers and map out your color selection to place contrasting colors next to one another. Here's a look at my finished mandala using all the same steps. It's been a pleasure getting to share this project with you. Even if things don't go right your first attempt, you can always come back and try this project again as you're going to gain a better understanding of how this whole process works and the things that you can do to improve it. The key is to just keep creating and good things will happen.